You're listening to a Monster Kid podcast.
Welcome to A Dingo Ate My Movie, a podcast that features classic Ozploitation and other slightly left of centre and overlooked Australian films from the 70s, 80s and beyond. I'm Pete, and today I'm joined by Sketches as we head into the wetlands of the far north of Australia to discuss Dark Age from 1987.
Rider. That is his name. The Night Rider. Remember him when you look at the night sky.
Hey Sketches, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Pete. How's things?
I'm good, I'm really good. It's great to have you back on the show again. It's so good getting people back on and chatting with them again and going through their favourite Ozploitation movies. So this one is something, you really like this movie. You've said that to me in the past. And so I thought, perfect. Let's get Sketches on to talk about Dark Age.
It's not the only croc film that took my fancy either during the whole Ozploitation deep dive at the moment.
There's a few, isn't there?
There's the Blackwater films, which are, if you like stuff like Open Water and The Reef, it's that sort of more depressing, gritty version. But if you want another one like this that's just pure fun, Greg McLean's Rogue.
Oh, yes.
With, is it Rhea Mitchell? Rhea, I think. She was the lady that was in the Silent Hill movie.
Oh, okay. Cool.
And Sam Worthington pops in for a quick cup of coffee, and Jarrett, along with, I think it was Mia Wasikowska's first film too.
Oh, wow. I'll have to check. I'm pretty sure I've seen it, but it might have been a long time ago or quite a while ago.
It was 2009 one.
Yeah, the Croc film's always good. Then you go back to probably my favourite, going back to the 80s, like Alligator, which is a hoot too. So great Croc. There's a lot of Croc movies, actually. There's almost as many Croc movies as there are shark movies.
Yeah, you got Mega Croc, Wolf Croc, the Lake Placid collection. Ooh.
Lake Placid's really good, actually, the first one, with Betty White. Today, though, we're going to talk about Dark Age. I'll just go through a quick plot summary. So local ranger Steve Harris has been ordered to deal with a massive saltwater crocodile that is terrorising the local community. However, the local Aboriginal community believe the croc contains the spirits of their past and want it to be left alone. With this knowledge, Steve must come up with a solution that respects the Aboriginal community while keeping the people of the local community safe. So it's an interesting story. This one, I like the. I suppose I'll go into it in my initial thoughts, but I just really like the kind of like the environmental view of this as well, which I thought was really good.
There's a lot of levels of politics that goes along with all of the blood and adventure of it all. Very much like a Jaws.
I was going to say, to be totally honest, it's got some Jaws beats to it, right? So
yes.
It definitely has, and I'll bring them up as we go through. It's quite funny when you see them when you see them pop up. So it stars John Jarrett yet again, another Ozploitation sort of star who's been in lots of this stuff. Of course, he was in Wolf Creek, and we saw him in Next of Kin. We have Nikki Coggill as Kathy Pope. Not as much movie work. She's done a lot of soapies in Australia, so Sons and Daughters and Neighbours, things like that. Max Phipps was John Besser, who is great in this movie. He's just such a good villain in this movie. And he was in Mad Max 2 and Nightmares, things like that. And, of course, we have Burnham as Underbund. We saw him in Howling 3 when I did that with Jacob. And he's also been in a few other movies in Australia, Ground Zero, a few other things like that. And then we have David Gopal as Ajarol. Is it Ajarol?
Ajarol.
Ajarol. That's it. And he's been in a lot of great Australian movies. So he was in Walkabout, The Last Wave. He's also been in things like, I think he's been in Crocodile Dundee's and both the Crocodile Dundee movies.
Yeah, he was Nev in Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah, so he's done a lot of work in Australia. He's very well known in Australia. And then we have Ray Marr as Rex Garrett, who's the mayor. I think he's the mayor of the city there. He's been in a lot of movies, My Brilliant Career, Breaker Morant. And he's been in a soapy in Australia. I don't know if you get Home and Away over there, but
yes,
Alf in Home and Away, those flaming kids, and he was in that from the start. I think 1988 he started in Home and Away, and he's still in it, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's like, I know your face from somewhere, but I don't know where. And then I check the IMDb, and I'm like, no,
it's Alf.
Can't be. He's as awkward as Richard Ayoade in A Dark Place in this.
He's I can't believe, I think he holds the record, I think, for the longest single character in a running, sort of soapy. It's just amazing. And it's amazing that show's still going. I don't watch it. I'm not trying to sound cool saying I don't watch it, but
Neighbours and Home and Away are kind of staples over here as well. So they've never gone out of fashion since the 80s here.
They're interesting shows because Neighbours is very suburban, and Home and Away is all about the beach and the ocean, right? The shoreline.
Right.
And in different communities. Anyway, we're not here to talk about soapies.
Yeah.
So it was directed by Arch Nicholson. He was the second unit director on Razorback. And it's based on the book Numenwari by Graham Webb, which I've actually going to order and read it myself. And so that's what it was based on, and that was published in 1980. So, which
is kind of a nice rhyming thing with Razorback, because that was based on a paperback as well.
It was, yeah. So it's good to see them sort of come from, the written word rather than just being made up. So, and you can see from this movie that it was, that the novel, well, I'm looking forward to read it myself, but the novel obviously has a lot to do with the Aboriginal people and things like that. And if you look at the cover that I saw on Amazon, it looks that way as well.
Okie dokie.
So I'm looking forward to picking that up. Now, where to watch this? So, like I was saying to you before we started recording, I own the Blu-ray, which you can get from Umbrella Entertainment, which is a fantastic Blu-ray. But funnily enough, both times I watched this for this episode, I watched it on Amazon Prime. So it's available Amazon Prime in Australia. It's been on Amazon Prime forever. So if you're looking for a streaming service that has it, in Australia it's Prime. I don't know about outside. I'm assuming it's available. It tends to be available everywhere.
Well, over here, I accidentally discovered it on YouTube one afternoon, and I think it was after I found Frog Dreaming on Prime, because we managed to get quite a few Brian Trenchard Smiths on Prime over here. But trying to get Dark Age was a bit of a hassle until I saw a seller on eBay that was selling the Umbrella Blu-ray, and a couple of weeks arrived, and it was pretty nice. Nice reversible cover, a very, very little VHS grain to it, but the polish-up's pretty pristine in places.
Oh, that's good.
Which is a little bit alarming at times because the pace is so frantic, nothing lingers. And a shot which kind of like the pace is just at a 10 from the get-go. Yeah,
it doesn't really slow down a lot, does it, the movie? It sort of moves quite quickly, which is good. I mean, it's funny. I always find the second time you watch something, for me, I tend to notice the pacing more. And when I watched it the second time last night, I was finding, wow, I was like, this movie is actually moving quite quickly. And I was like, wow, I'm almost at the end of the movie already. And I only feel like I've been watching, for a few minutes. It's really, really good. So, yeah. So my initial thoughts on the movie, I really loved it. It's a great movie. I really loved the fact that even though it's a man versus monster film, it explores a lot of deeper issues, such as the relationship between the Aboriginal people and the environment. Underbun talks at length during the movie about how they respect nature, and in particular Numunwari, so it holds no fear for them. So they have that sort of that mutual respect. There's some references to how colonization of Australia by Europeans upset the balance of life and the hurt they inflicted on the Aboriginal people, which is really interesting sort of subtext. It's not, I like it because it's not thrown in your face. It's not talked at you, but it's part of the story and it's really interesting. The acting is pretty high standard. I kind of really like the acting in this film. John Jarratt, does a pretty good job in his, and I always, whenever I look at John Jarratt, I can never get over his dimple on his chin. I always it's like almost hypnotic sometimes, right?
He's so chiseled in this as well.
He is.
I was like trying to place a sort of character actor I'd put him aside with, and I'm like, I'm getting somewhere between like Shadow era Alec Baldwin, and just for all the hat and the hunting and the trekking gear and the rest of it, I'm like, I'm getting Pete Postlethwaite from Jurassic Park: The Lost World.
Yeah, that's a good one, yeah.
And it's like, how did you not do more films like this? And then you see Wolf Creek, and it's like a complete 180 bit of a similar visual.
Wolf Creek is like totally so different because these characters, like the character in this movie, I think the character in Next of Kin and a few other movies around this era, he generally plays the good guy, right? And in most of his movies, he kind of does play the good guy. And when you see him in Wolf Creek, he's so good at the part. Like, he's so terribly evil in those movies, but also charismatic. And Max Phipps, who plays this maniacal bogan John
just the
or Jack.
worst.
Oh man, he had me like, I was excitedly awaiting his eventual death at the jaws of the croc, because you knew it was going to happen, right? Eventually,
Yeah.
he was going to get his at the end. I was surprised in the middle. We'll get to it, but I was surprised in the middle he only lost his arm. I was like, oh, I hope he gets worse than that, but he did. So that's good. The effects are good. The mechanical croc is pretty good, building something that size. And, you can see most of the time it was either floated or just the jaws worked. There were times when you could see it walking. It was kind of a bit not quite there, but good enough. And it was really well done. And to me, the soundtrack was great. There's not a lot to talk about with music in this movie. Just to know the soundtrack in this film is really well done, and it suits the movie really well.
It's got some pretty interesting drums and synth going on.
Yeah,
And some pretty rolling guitars as well, especially at the waterfront scenes in the city when the old man's being attacked.
So what were your thoughts?
This was just a delightful film. Like, there's a certain amount of intensity and earnestness about it, particularly when you look at David Golopil and Burnham, where you just sort of like, you have one with David being this just super jazzed to be there, just heroic cowboy, just throwing spears, doing the rifle bit, tending the horses, just solid backup. And then you have Burnham, who just has that sort of gravity that sagely old people happen to have.
Yeah, that wisdom, and yeah.
And it was very hard to put my finger on it, because I swear I've seen him before in things, and I think I've flashed back to like Howling 3 from when I was wee, and I'm like, wait, it was this. This was the start. This was the start, and then seeing the IMDb and going, oh, he did all of these films in '87. Oh, I were mistaken. Although I may have conflated a bit of that and a bit of the character Gateway from the X-Men, who has the similar Aboriginal elder aesthetic to him.
Mm, mm.
But no, like the lines he's given's just absolutely golden. Where he's describing Namanwari and the relationship it has to the community and how they're never gonna kill him and how he doesn't fear the white man. And then he's just like, yeah, I've said all the important things. I'm gonna sit down now. Gonna watch my telly.
That scene is great.
Gotta watch my telly. Yeah, people are dying. I need to sit down. When you look at people like Rex Rhaegar and Max, there's a certain amount of scenery chewing that, like we were saying, like you're just so intently waiting for Max to get it. And I initially thought that he was the dad from Starship Troopers, but just ultra greasy. But apparently that's another character actor from, I think he's Canadian. But I've seen him in a ton of things as well, so it's like, wait a minute, I'm getting confused here. But no, absolute slime of the earth character. We thought the Bogans were bad in Razorback. This guy could be a distant cousin to the Baker Boys.
Well, what's worse with this guy is pretty realistic, right?
Yeah,
I look at a character like that and I think, well, this guy could exist in real life. He's like typical bogan, beer drinking, doesn't really care much for the environment, happy to shoot crocodiles all over the place for whatever reason person. And yeah, he's kind of quite believable.
yeah, and the thing that makes it worse is he knows that he can get away with it on the technicalities, and he really tries to stick that in to Jarrett's character.
Anything else stick out for you?
Beautiful locations, just absolutely wonderful locations, because this was Cairns and Alice Springs, wasn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. Cairns is beautiful. I've spent in the early '80s. I was working in a show band, and we finished our 3 months at a resort in the Gold Coast, and they did a tour, and the tour took us right up through Queensland, up through North Queensland, and we finished the tour in Cairns as well. And Cairns is beautiful. My memories of it are a bit shaky now because that was back in probably, I don't know, 84, something like that. And I'd love to go back there again. And yeah, I was doing a show with an Elvis impersonator, of course. But but yeah, it was a job. It was a job at the time. So
that would have been 3 years before this.
probably, yeah. I think it was. Well, hang on, let me think. I was born in 62, so I was 21 in 83, right? That's right. That's good math. And we started the trip we started the resort job just after my 21st birthday. And then we did 3. Yeah, so it would have been probably 80, 83, 84 that we did. Yeah, so a couple of years before this was filmed. And it's beautiful, that area. And we went up through Airlie Beach and things like that. It was a really good trip. So anything else before we get onto the film?
Crocodile's fantastic. Took a moment or two to properly look at it, and like upon closer scrutiny, like it looks fairly rubbery, but it does have some great natural texture to it, and it's not monstrous either. Like they don't go overboard with like the raised spiky scales or the size of the jaw or the eye or anything. It looks like like a big animal.
Yeah, it's like what you would expect out of like a 25-foot long saltwater crocodile, right?
Yeah, and apparently they called it Chris.
Oh, did
and when it shorted down, because it shorted down with the walking bit, and that's the only part where it's really shoddy and it gives away its tail. They used the head with the sticks, and they ended up calling that one Christ Our Saviour. Sadly, not a lot of trivia about this on the makings of.
Yeah, there's not a lot on this. There's bits and pieces. I guess one of the things that stuck out for me when I think about when I was looking this movie up and learning about the movie, effectively, it was never released in Australia theatrically. So
that boggles the mind. Like, I know it was something like the company that owned the rights ended up going up the Swanee, and it's all been lost to time and that.
Yeah, Avco Embassy had the rights. They were the distributor, and they went belly up just prior to the film releasing, yeah.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah, so it's only had a few individual screenings. I think there was one that was actually organised by Quentin Tarantino when he was in Sydney in 2009.
Yeah, because he's got his own personal 35mm print of this. Because he was such a fan of this that he organised the screenings and that, but also in Django Unchained, where he's playing the part of the leader of this gang of Australian dynamiters. John Jarrett's one of his cronies with him there.
Yeah, I know that movie. I never forget that scene because I saw that movie at the cinema, and I remember getting to that scene and going, "Hang on, they were talking with an Australian accent, and they're not even trying to hide it." And I'm like, "What the fuck?" And I still to this day don't really understand how an Australian in that time period ended up in where he was.
You could ask the same of a Belgian. Oh wait, no, he was Dutch. A Dutch dentist turned bounty hunter.
Yes, exactly. So it's
But that whole thing's like chock full of exploitation stuff. So like I'd probably put it up to that. Like he does all these wonderful little remixes of things that sometimes boggles the mind. But then it's like, see what you're doing.
Yeah, his movies are just exploitation movies done with a big budget, basically, right? So,
oh yeah.
He really loves the movie. Like he was saying that you could re-release that movie today, and people would go and see it, even in the
like
condition it was.
2,000 screens, people would see it, and it's like, could this would actually be a perfect like midnight film? Or I know it ran in 2015 in the Melbourne International Film Festival as well. It got selected for that, so it shows that it's definitely got legs for a program.
Yeah, I think it would go. I think people would still go and see it. I wouldn't like to see it remade because going back to your point, the croc looked really realistic in the movie.
Yes.
These days, they overdo it. Like you said, they would have had larger spikes and they bigger jaws. And the thing I loved about the way that the croc was in the movie is it actually looked like a croc, especially in the scenes where it's sort of swimming in the water and things like that. It's really good.
The simplest and greatest effect it's got is any of those shots where you just see the barest amount of the head poking out of the water against the landscape, or little things like in the pier section where the guy's pouring his beer over the pier and you just see that the croc's hiding underneath the pier, and it just slowly just sort of groups back down until the water's flat.
Yeah. No, it's really well done. All right, so let's have a little bit of a chat about the film itself. So it opens up. There's an introduction, very much saying that for 40,000 years, the Australian Aboriginals have been living in harmony with the land, and a lot of their animals, or many of the animals, are sacred. The most dangerous of these is the giant saltwater crocodile, which Arnhem Land Aborigines called Numunwari. We're introduced to Ajarl, who's herding bulls on a property. So he's obviously working on a property. I think you called back to this before, where he's riding horseback and they're
Just having the time of his life.
he's loving it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you know a monster film's great when you have a text crawl followed up by a great character actor just playing with the scenery and having a time. It calls back to some things like Anaconda or A Deep Rising or quite a lot of the monster films of the 90s.
And then we have the scene where, they've finished their work for the day and there's a whole bunch of them down by the edge of the river, and there's obviously the stereotypical big cook guy, and they're all about to eat, and then there's sort of this wind comes up, this breeze comes up, and we're looking out to the water, and we can see a crocodile. I don't know if it's the crocodile. They're being stalked, and I think it's Agile who looks out and just says the name of Namanwari, so he senses that it's close by. It's just a really good opening scene, and it was great to have an opening scene that didn't end with at first when you first watch this movie you think, oh well, all these people are going to get attacked and killed, right? Because that's usually how a monster movie or an animal versus people movie sort of starts, is usually an opening set piece where there's an attack of some sort. But the fact that it didn't, it was really good, and I think that lends it a bit of credence as well, and gives it a bit more depth than just making it like a full-on exploitation sort of opening.
Not only that, it gives a bit of clever exposition, because with David playing Burnham's son, well, we know by the end of this he takes over the chief role as well. And it's like, of course he can sense the crocodile like his dad. They're of the same sort of descended line that they explore throughout the film. When we start getting the bits of history and exposition later on.
Yeah. It's great. And then there's the whole rainstorm that comes up as well. And it really sets the scene, I think, for the movie in general. We have, then it cuts to Steve Harris in his truck. That's our introduction to Steve Harris. He's working as a ranger in the area. And I think we start out by him measuring a small croc, like a baby croc on the side of the river. And I can't remember exactly what he says, but he's talking to it, whatever. And so you can tell he's obviously a ranger, and to be a ranger, you've got to be a bit of a conversationalist, a conservative, and
a conversational conservationist.
Conservationist, yes, exactly. And he gets stuck in the water. He goes to leave, and he's going halfway across the river in his four-wheel drive, and because of the rain, his four-wheel drive gets stuck in the middle of the river, and he's radioing back saying he won't be back tonight. I'm going to have to sleep in the car, whatever. It's a bit of a nothing conversation. I don't know why they're sort of yelling at each other, but
it kind of felt like you would think that an attack would come here, but by just merciful pacing of this film, or rather just restraint, we don't get one. It's just, hey, I need some help. The Aboriginal team comes around and they're like, you need a hand? I need a hand. Hey. And it's like, this is so friendly.
they are, and it's really good, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like so many things. You expect so many things to go wrong at the start of this, and it just completely just blindsides you with just how lovely it all is.
Yeah.
Like there's no for an exploitation movie, it doesn't go bare socks.
Yeah, that's true.
Because by now we would have had like gore and all sorts happening, and it's just oof.
Yeah, true. And I think it's great because it also sets up that whole mutual respect between Steve and the Aboriginal community. Like he understands them, they understand him, they understand he's working for the environment as much as he can, and that he's also got a job to do, but they treat each other with respect, and they're mates, right? They recognize him and they say, "Hey, do you want a hand?" And they push his car out, the 4-wheel drive out of the water. And I'm assuming I don't know if he goes back to town. I'm assuming he might stay the night camping with them or whatever. Yeah, he obviously has a good relationship with them.
Yes, and it's even when he gets to town in that, and he meets up with Underbund, and it's just like they're clasping arms like Predator, and it's like, oh, you know each other, and you don't even have to say the whole. It's like, I know you too.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. The relationship between them is fantastic, and they have especially with Underbun and Steve, the relationship is great. They obviously do go back a long way, and have a really good understanding, good sort of mutual friendship between them. So yeah, it's good. And then we have the first shot, I guess, of the group of, I keep calling it, I think through of the Bogans, right? These guys, I guess if you're in the US, they would be rednecks, right? So they were these guys that all they do is pretty much drink, get drunk, and shoot things. And they're all together, and they kind of like, there's Max Phipps' character, John or Jack, they call him, is kind of like the ringleader's the wrong word, but he's kind of like the dominant male, right? He's the alpha male of the group. And he wants to go shooting crocs, and a few of them are a bit, oh, look, the weather's too bad, it's dangerous because there could be flooding, etc. He pretty much forces them to go.
And the seedier thing about it is he doesn't have to do much.
To do it,
like he's just like, oh, I'm gonna go by myself, and they're like, oh,
yeah, they decide.
And you just see them have like a mini headache, and it's like, could have just said no.
But they go, and as they're going, they're warned by Ajarul about Namanwari, but of course they just ignore him, and they make some nasty remarks about Aboriginals and things like that, and off they go. So they've already done their job, right, in the script and in the way it's been played out. These are the guys that, forget the croc. These are the bad guys in the movie.
Not only that, if you're gonna be racist, you're on the menu.
Yes, for sure. Effectively, these guys go out in their boat and they just go on a killing spree, right? They're just shooting crocs for, I'm assuming they're either A, eating them, and B, making the money from skinning them, or the jaws or something like that.
Like, it boggled the mind to be like that. It seemed like they kept on doing it as a process and just bang, 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 bang. And it's like, you should be up to your arms in this boat. What are you doing?
You see them with 2 crocs tied up next to the boat. It almost seems like they're just killing them because they can in a lot of the case, and it's really sad. And as someone that likes nature and likes animals like I do, and I'm sure you do, and most of the people listening do, it's kind of, some of it's a hard watch when you and there's a scene later where they're just shooting crocodiles, and you just see them shooting crocodiles.
Yeah, and they don't shy away from it either.
No.
There's a lot in this that that sort of lulls you in at the beginning, thinking that, oh, here's a soft sell, but then as soon as you get the hunts and that, it's like eyes are getting blown out and everything, and it's like, are you folk doing this like an Italian film way back in the day?
Yeah, it's pretty full on. Anyway, so back to the Bogan guys. So they go after all these crocs. They're shooting all these crocs, and then we see Namanwari and one of the guys. They're like, John or Jack, whatever his name is, saying, "Let's go kill it. Let's go kill it." A few of the other men are like, "Nah, come on, it's too big. Let's leave it alone and let's go," because they realize that it's a dangerous crocodile and they need to be careful. They're actually a little bit smart, and he just wants to kill it. It goes under the water. They can't find it. They're mucking around in the boat. I don't know what's going on. And then all of a sudden it attacks the boat. And I think it kills 2 people, I think, 2 of the guys in the boat. One of them, the great thing about this movie is the sound. Or you can hear that's crunching bones, and it's... Ugh.
Jaws 3 was really bad for that because they over egged the crack on that. Like as soon as one of the reasons I do not go for that anymore is just like I can watch a shark film, but as soon as you make a crunch that sounds like an apple being sunk into, just no, thank you.
Yeah,
I don't need that in my ear.
it's pretty bad. And what's interesting with this movie as well is they seem to be quite on the money with how, crocs work. And obviously they had advisors, etc. But you see in a couple of scenes where the croc takes someone and then it does the roll, which is
Yes, the death roll.
the death roll, which it does to kill it. The scary thing about crocs, a lot of the time, if they kill you, they tuck you away somewhere to come back for later.
Yes. They do that with the alligators in Crawl, where they sort of do the death roll in that, but they're mostly like dragging and ripping and tearing instead. It's not a Jaws situation where you're being broken down
Yeah.
to fit inside in that one moment.
Yeah, and it's like later when when the three men are out looking after the attack. I'm jumping ahead a bit, but they find that body just lying there, and it's almost like normally a croc would probably put it somewhere else, but you're thinking to yourself, well, I think the croc's like, well, I'm going to come back to that later. Yeah, so it kills two of the men. I think there were four men on that boat. Initially, I thought it was three men were killed, but I think it's two.
Yeah, I think it gets two, and I think Phelps' character winds up drowning one of them in the water.
Yeah. I think
Which is rather, add it to the tally of reasons why this character is the worst in this.
Yeah, he's the villain of the movie for sure. And then we have the morning. We're introduced to Underbun, and we find the truck. He goes past, and the trucks that the men were in is kind of the tides come up, and there's it's kind of in the water, and he realizes that they haven't returned. So he and Argerol go out and search for them, and they only find John, Max Phelps' character, and they bring him to shore. And there's a group. There's like they're sort of near a Aboriginal settlement, and there's a group of community on the shore there, and that's where we're also introduced to Kathy Pope, and they bring John to shore, and Steve's and John having this conversation, and he's saying that it killed his men, and he wants it dead, blah blah blah, all the usual sort of stuff.
Yeah, and he's like, I can get away with this. You got to kill it. I just did some of the worst things ever last night, and you can't stop me.
Yeah, and then Steve and Kathy have a conversation for the first time. So you learn pretty much during that conversation that they have history. That sounds like they were together, and we learn later that they were together for some time, and for whatever reason, or pretty obvious reasons, I'd say, on some of the other conversations there, they were no longer together. Although by the end of this movie, it looks like they are again. But anyway.
It's a lot of soapy, like, you slept around, you were a lousy fuck, you did this, you were too interested in this, and he's like, can't be done with this.
Yeah.
So many things happening right now, love.
So then we have Steve, Underbun, and Argerol searching the river. They go looking for what's left of John's mates, and they get to a point where he's measuring a footprint of the croc, and he understands by measuring that. He's like, wow, this is a big croc. Then they find the remains of one of the men. He looks like he hasn't really been bitten. I think
that might be the drowned boy.
I think it might be, because Underbun sort of says there's no bite marks. It doesn't look like he's been bitten. Yeah, I'd say he was the one that was drowned.
Took him.
Yeah, and then further away when Steve's walking around, he finds the arm of the other fella as well, and he says to Underbun, "Look, we have to take these bodies back." And Underbun's basically like, "No, leave them here. They were attacking the spirit, the croc," and I think he says something about leave them for the devil to take, or something like that. Interesting. Like, he's like, "No, they did the wrong thing. We don't want to take them back." I'm assuming they did. And we get to a scene which is kind of difficult for some people. And if you don't like scenes of children being killed in a movie, then this scene's definitely not for you. You're about to say something.
No, I was about to say May would not go for this.
May was quite disturbed. I watched it with her the other night and I forgot to tell her about it. And
oh, no.
And she's not a big one for this sort of thing. We get the scene. So just to give you a bit of background, there's a group of these Aboriginal children. There's like children. They look like teens as well in this community, and they're all playing on the river's edge or in the water, whatever. There's this little boy wearing a red T-shirt. So if you see the little boy with a red T-shirt, you don't want to watch it. Just skip ahead. And he's playing with a little boat. And I'm watching the movie, and May says, "Oh, look at him. He's so cute." And I'm like, "Oh my God,
no.
Should I say something?" And I was like, no, I won't say anything. And because, part of the experience of watching a movie like that is sometimes confronting things that are a bit difficult.
You need some crock shock.
And this poor child is in the water when Kathy, who is some distance away, sees the croc surface. So she goes running to try and get the kids out of the water. She runs all the way over, goes onto the end of the dock, goes down into the water to reach the child just as the croc surfaces and bites. And you see it, right?
Yeah.
You see it bite down.
Yeah. One bite and that kid's gone.
He's gone.
And it's got a big sickening crunch.
Yeah, the crunch is terrible in that scene. And poor May, she was like, oh my God. Yeah, it's pretty difficult scene to watch. And now that you've seen it, you see when you're rewatching the movie, you see the little kid in the red T-shirt and you go, oh, here we go. And I'm surprised even that, it's not often you see movies that kill children, right? They're usually spared. When you think of Jaws, you think of Brody's son, who kind of nearly gets attacked by the shark but doesn't, and things like that. But this movie goes there. So, and it's really interesting because later on when they're talking about it and Steve's talking to Underbund about, look, we have to kill this crocodile. We have to do something about this crocodile. It killed a child. Underbund, and I guess the Aboriginal way of thinking is, look, that child was sick all the time. He was always in hospital, etc. The croc was essentially doing what nature should be doing. I think that was what I took from that conversation.
Yeah. And Steve's just like, that's really cold, and it's like, that's life, Steve.
Yeah, it is.
Circle of life. I'll say this of horror films that dispatch kids. Either you have a very good reason for doing it, or you're doing it for the shock value alone.
Yeah.
And some of them are very few and far between. And you could always tell it's going to be a terrible time if they show it just full up. Like, this one was fine. This was pretty tasteful for most standards.
As it can be for this sort of thing, yeah.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
But something like actual trash, like Alien versus Predator 2, where you see a kid getting straight up face huggered.
Right.
No, trash film.
Yeah.
Trash film goes for the full on shock.
Yeah. It's quite a scene, and at the end of it we've got Kathy obviously beside herself because she tried to save the child. She would have seen it, she would have been mere feet away from what happened.
She could have literally picked up that kid, but it just was too quick and too big.
It was really quite a shocking scene. It's probably the strongest scene violence-wise in the movie, to be honest. I think in regards of not just the violence itself, but the actual, thought
having
behind
some
it.
meaning as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Then we have this whole scene where we've got Steve's colleagues all turning up. There's a seaplane. There's a group of men to kill the croc. and they're going to go out searching for it. Steve talks to Underbun again, and he sort of says to him, like, what's so special about this croc? And Underbun explains that Namwari is a dreaming crocodile and it can't be killed. It's old. And he's kind of, he says that it's very important to the Aboriginal people. He says it's old, it's very smart as well, and you're not going to be able to kill it.
Tell me why this crocodile is so special.
Told you. Him dreaming crocodile, that one. You not get him that Namanwari. Him proper old. Him smart. Like old people. Him belong this river from way upstream. From other countries. His own billabong. This place my father's country, and his father, and father before that.
Why did he leave his billabong?
Biggest rain this season, so he come look his country. When I was a little boy, my father, he take me to that billabong, and he sang to that crocodile, and he'd come up and listen. Him not harm you, that Namanwari. He know you friendliest Aboriginal people. He can tell from your eye.
That's good, old man, but if he kills others, we're still in trouble.
I go now. That mob want me to dance. Dance to Namanwari.
And I think the backstory was that it was one of the first elders or something like that, that the tribe was under famine and that, and he went to this gully and became a crocodile and started eating fish and that, and then there was no famine. And
that's right. He walked to a billabong. He said he walked to a billabong and became a croc. And the whole reasoning behind this issue at the moment is he's saying that the crocodile is lost at the moment.
Yes.
It needs to be back where it belongs, and that's why it's acting out the way it's acting out.
Long time ago, the crocodile was man, but nothing for him to eat. So he jumped into billabong, changed into crocodile. Here, plenty tucker, and he grow big and make other rivers and all them creeks. Him lost that Namanwari. He been leave his camp in that stone country, now can't find his track home. Him lost.
Do you know where to find him, Underbun?
He come, see white fella change his country. See what happened to Aboriginal man. See all them boats, them guns. See too much dying. You people frightened that crocodile. That big problem, see? Always fright. You frighten animal, it kill. You mark my words, same as human. You frighten man, he kill. Aboriginal man, he respect that crocodile. Him different, but he got right to live same like you and me.
Because it's lost, it's been on a journey, it doesn't know where it is, it can't find its way back. So that's the whole point of the movie, is that Underbun wants to find the crocodile and get it back to where it should be, which is the ultimate goal of the movie. Yeah, it's really, really interesting.
Ecological displacement.
Very well put. It's very well put. I love that scene where he's talking about that with him, about the dreaming crocodile, and we have the group of Aboriginal community, and they're all doing their dancing in the background.
Oh,
and
so good.
And then at the end, Underbun just says to Steve, I'm going to go off and dance now and join the thing. And he joins in and they're dancing. And it's so good. It's such a great scene. I really like that scene.
That and David Gulpil, man of 1,000 talents, just super into the dance and tutting to the beat and that. And I genuinely thought they had like a snare drum or something. I'm like, no, he's actually making that noise.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love watching that Aboriginal dancing that they do, and because as as a people, that they tell a lot of their stories through dance and things like that. A lot of the Dreamtime stories come through dance and interpretation that way. It's really interesting stuff. It's really good stuff. That's what I loved. I think that's the thing I loved the most about this movie is it really showed, I think, in a positive light, the Aboriginal people and you know their thoughts and their what they're all about. And I thought that was a really good part of the movie.
I find it very shocking that there wasn't at least attempts to make films like Dark Age that did this after.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot that you could, like, I'm not saying, like, take the dream and take Aboriginal folklore and tales and just make horror movies out of everything. But there's some pretty decent, scary things that you could home in on and try to find the metaphors here, there, and everywhere that could have been worth a shot.
Yeah, it's surprising, but I kind of, in a way, I think it's kind of good that they kind of just stuck to doing it this way, you know, in movies like this. And
because it's one thing getting it right once. There's a whole other kettle of fish if it ends up making a mockery of it all down the
and
line.
exploiting it for the wrong reasons. Yeah, absolutely. Agree.
Because there's one wee thing that just as a wee aside, there's this creature that I found really interesting called the Yaramayahu. And it's like this little red impish vampire that lives in the trees. And what it does is it swallows you whole and it starts like sucking at your life force, as it were. But the horrible thing about it is it spits you back out again. And they thrive off of that. But if it happens a couple more times, you start to turn into one as well. And they're like these just little fetal red men that look absolutely terrifying. Like, honestly, do a Google search for the art for it, because some of those things are fantastic.
Oh, wow. And this is an Aboriginal story? Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
The name that you mentioned is familiar, but I haven't really looked into it much.
Yeah, there's stuff like that. The Hui, who's like a giant carnivorous frog. Well, the next one you'll see will be on Frog Dreaming with the Bunyip.
Yeah, there's talk. We talked about that a little bit in Frog Dreaming. Frog Dreaming is interesting in once again, there's other ways that the Aboriginal people are portrayed and that was interesting looking at that movie. It's very interesting that some of the movies, especially we've done these 2 episodes in a row, that have an influence from the Aboriginal people in them. It's quite good. I think that's what makes a lot of this sort of cinema, whether it's Ozploitation or not, really interesting and gives a different point of view, and it just colours it and makes it a little bit more down to earth, I think, as well, because the Aboriginal people are pretty down to earth people.
Mm-hmm. It is truly unique culture and cinema combining.
So then we have these, John and his bogan mates turn up to hunt the croc with the others. There's a whole lot of people going out to hunt the crocodile. Again, this is where we get lots of crocodiles being shot. You were talking about it before.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why, if they're looking for this one big croc, why are they shooting all these other crocs? And whatever.
Like Jaws with the shark hunting, where it's like, hey, we caught a shark. There's a tiger shark. Oh, we caught a shark. There's a dogfish. We got another one. No. Just because it's shark shaped doesn't mean it's that shark.
Exactly. Yeah. It's I guess that's almost a Jaws parallel as well, right? And of course they don't find Numenwari at all, but it's lurking near them. You see the boats going out down the river and you get a POV of the croc from like behind them. And it's like, okay, Underbun said it is a smart croc. It is a smart croc. It knows, when to sort of stay low and stay away. We get an introduction then to Rex Garrett, played by, I was going to say Alf. And he's the typical man versus animal town mayor, right? He's
Alan's boss.
Yeah, he is Alan's boss. Steve's trying to explain to him that the Aboriginal people don't want Numunwari killed. And Rex is like, he's like, screw that, I want it dead. But we also learn as this little bit at the end where I think is it a secretary or somebody or something like that mentions that there's a Japanese business consortium and they want to build a condominium in the city. And I'm like, oh, this is getting a bit Jaws-like. It was kind of like, you know, it's the first. Well, there's a few callbacks to Jaws, but that's the first one in regards to the whole. You know, we want you to be rid of it. We want to be rid of this problem, so we don't have to deal with, you know, people not coming here and people not spending their money here. We go back after that scene and we're having this conversation. Kathy's done some work and looking into the background of this whole thing of the Numunwari. And she says to Steve that, look, the Numunwari, the Aboriginal believe is that it carries the spirit of the people with it. And that's why it's so important to them. So in these couple of scenes, we really understand why it's so important that the croc doesn't, you know, they want to, yes, they want people to be safe from the croc, but they don't want it killed. And I think that sets it up really well for the, you know, the last half of the movie pretty much.
Because they literally say that they give the bones of the deceased elders to after they've passed away.
Yes.
And that's how it carries on the lineage into the dreaming.
Yes, that's right. And then we have this scene. So Steve's still in town. He decides he's obviously set up to meet Kathy for dinner. And they go to this restaurant, this seafood restaurant. And when the waiter comes over and tells him, what is it? Was it a barramundi and pepper sauce or something like that? All of a sudden, I was like, oh, yum! I would love a lovely piece of.
Yeah, and it's like if you want any of the specials, they're on the cork board.
Yeah, they're on the cork board.
And it's like, okay, and they're just like, let's have an awkward drinky scene, and I'm like, what happened? Nothing happened.
Nothing really happened.
This was just soaps and suds.
Yeah, it was really weird, wasn't it? I thought they were going to talk out their relationship. They started to, but they kept getting interrupted. And I think that's why eventually Steve's like, screw this, let's go, sort of thing. But all I wanted to do when I watched it was have nice barramundi.
So what is barramundi?
It's a fish, but it's really tasty, really tasty. Anyway, so yeah, so they have dinner, and as they're leaving, we're introduced to what's the guy's name? Joe. Is he like the town drunk or whatever he is?
Yeah, he's just like, hello there, drunken old man from every film who's mates with folk.
That's right. And he's leaving and he says goodbye to him because it sounds like Steve's a guy that kind of knows everyone anyway. And poor Joe almost gets run down by this car of more bogans. And then these bogans just think, oh, you know would it be fun to do? Let's three of us in our probably mid-20s. Let's go and beat the shit out of this old guy that could be our grandfather, right?
Yeah, we got to fill in the quota of cars to bullies ratio.
Oh my god!
For the film, and it's like over here, like you do that, they drive by, but then it's like, wait a minute, this is an exploitation movie, and then you just hear the screech as the car turns round, and it's like, run, old man. For the love of God, run.
Yeah, and once again, it's another scene that's kind of a bit unsettling because I'm like, I always get, whenever I hear on TV a crime that someone's committed against like an elderly person, I'm like, holy shit, just, you know, that's so cowardly and so... But obviously the payoff in this movie is that they beat him up and it's terrible. They don't kill him, thankfully, but he gets beaten up and one of the guys that beats him up, of course, ends up on the menu of Numunwari, and that's the payoff, right? And that's the whole thing, I guess. The whole thing is around, let's be really awful to this old bloke but at the end of it, one of the guys is going to get taken by the croc.
And he's like this big, squarish Billy Idol looking guy.
Yeah.
Or like a Bogan Idol.
Yeah. And between all that, we've got Kathy and Steve. They're going home and having drinks. And I loved his house. I was saying to May when we were watching, I was like, I'd love a house like this. You know, had that really open veranda, and they even had the TV in there. And I was like, wow, what era are we living in where you could leave all that stuff there and it wouldn't get stolen?
And bugs as well.
Oh, yeah, you'd have a mosquito problem for sure.
Yeah. Like, it was super nice, and it's like, people who have this in these films, this place is either going to be A, wrecked, B, blown up,
Yeah.
or C, he's just going to have the door open all the time and folks are wandering in, and he's just short of B there.
Yeah. And it looks a little bit like that area where they were. There was like a cane lounge and tables and stuff like that. It looked like there was a shot where you could see behind him. It looks like there was actually other doors. So I think this was like a big open veranda. It looked like there were other doors that would close behind him. Anyway, so they're having another chat there, and they're talking more about their relationship, past relationship, etc. I'm not going to waste too much time on this because it's a bit superfluous.
It's all soap. It's all soap and suds.
You know, we keep crossing back to Joe getting, you know, beaten up, and then we get the scene where obviously the one of the thugs gets eaten. The next morning, I'd say Steve gets called up. I think we see him get a call. He hangs up on one, and then the next one, obviously someone telling him that there was an attack in town. And once again, they're searching for Namanwari, and they don't find him. And we also see there's a news report of the attack on TV, and John and his bogan mates are at a pub or somewhere, and they see the story. So they're like, great, let's go into town and cause trouble again.
Yeah, and the TV's an interview with one of the guys is like, we was just minding our own business. And I'm like, oh, you did a big boy done it and run away.
Yeah, I saw that.
Oh. Yeah. What a shame!
Yeah, what a shame. We're just being normal blokes on a Friday night or whatever, and yeah, exactly. John goes into town, and Steve's there, of course. Steve is in town. John's in town. And what do I put in my notes here? Oh, I won't say what I wrote because it's rude. But I basically said John's an asshole.
Yeah,
and
I've got it right.
And they have this little fight. He gives him this awesome, John gives Steve this awesome, I shouldn't say awesome, but this kidney punch. I was like, geez, that obviously he must have pulled the punch because they're acting, but I'm like, Jesus, that would hurt. And yeah, so there's this fight, and Kathy tells him not to bother with him and all this sort of stuff. And, then we've got Rex Garrett, the mayor or whatever it is, posts a reward for $5,000, for the croc. And then he also complains that there's the Japanese investors are getting, cold feet. So we get that shades of Jaws again where they're, if we don't get this sorted soon, we're going to start losing money. Then we have this, they have the meeting in the city. Rex says to Underban that, we have to kill the crocodile. So Underban straight away is like, no, I've had enough of this. I'm out of here. He leaves the meeting. Steve tries to reason with him. And Underban really seriously says to Steve, if you try to kill this crocodile, he will kill you. So you can tell he's got this, he cares for Steve. He doesn't want Steve to die. He says, don't do it. I don't think he's just doing it because he doesn't want the crocodile killed. He actually cares for Steve and doesn't want to see Steve get hurt. And he knows in his own heart that he can't win a fight with a crocodile. So Steve then sort of storms off. And I don't know if it's because he thinks, oh shit, I'm supposed to take Underban with me, or he's having second thoughts.
Yeah, and he just has this great line of like, you can't solve problems by killing cars.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, he does.
and it's like,
because Steve turns around and goes back Because he leaves Underbun just standing at the side of the road. He goes back to get him. And then he sort of says to Underbun, well, what should we do? And he says, well, we should catch him and take him back to where he belongs.
You not solve problem killing car? Sometime you white fella not very smart.
Will you tell me how to solve the problem?
We catch that Naman worry. Bring him back his own country.
Catch him. Catch him alive and bring him back.
Right. So let's work on that. So they go back to the meeting and they agree that they're going to catch it, even though Rex isn't really on board for that. And Underbund wants, I can't remember the term he used. Was it like something about a piece of paper that he wanted?
Oh, a piece of writing paper.
Yeah, effectively saying he wants a contract to say that Namanwari belongs to him. So he has to, and Rex is like, oh, I'm not doing that shit. So Steve just gets a bit of paper and starts writing out, that a contract between him and Underbun saying that the croc is basically belong to him. That's when we go into the scene where, okay, we're in the final third of the film and we're talking about the final chase of the croc, catching the croc and putting it back where it was. And just before they leave, Steve and Kathy have words. She's kind of with him now, but she's kind of afraid for him, I'm assuming. That's why she doesn't want him to go. But eventually she sort of accepts that he has to do it. And she goes down to the dock where the men leave together on the boat to chase Namanwari and try and capture him and take him away, which once again is like that scene in Jaws where the boat's going out and Chief Brody's wife is at the window watching them go off in the boat. And, there's a lot of nods to Jaws in this movie.
Yes. I mean, even down to the sort of like, this film doesn't exactly have a horror tone to it. It's more of a action adventure like Jaws. Like even down to some of the music and some of the sweeping shots and the boat stuff and that and the hunts and searches. And it's part of what makes it a fun time, despite the crocs getting shot and the tons of unsavoury things that happen in the meanwhile.
It's kind of unsettling, all these unsavoury things that happened in Australia or happen in Australia in these movies. But anyway, unsavoury things happen everywhere in the world.
Yes, this is very true.
I think my next note, John and his bogan mates are fishing illegally and being bogan assholes in general. Because they're fishing, they're illegally putting a net across a river, which is illegal to catch fish. They're drinking beer and just throwing their cans into the river. So they're just being fucking assholes, right? Just bogan assholes. And then the Namanwari gets caught in their fishing net. And there's the scene where at first they're like, oh, it's not the big croc, it's something else. And then they realise it is the croc. And this is all happening while Steve and Underbun and Ajaral are searching. And the croc is caught in the net. And then fucking stupid Jack, decides he's going to get an axe and he's going to take it to the crocodile.
An axe isn't going to do shit on that. Like, you need to, like you saw with the rifles taking chunks out. Well, that's what you... And you think it's like, nah, I'm going to go in and I'm like, you're the one that's going to end up in pieces, my friend.
And he almost does, and he goes in, tries to axe it in the head and takes a big chunk out of it. He loses sight. The crocodile comes up and takes his arm. It's really odd because May's like, well, he would probably bleed out, right? For some reason, he doesn't. It gets cauterized somehow.
No. It's bleeding all the way through.
Yeah, but it's really weird. Like May, I kind of believe she's a nurse and sort of medically inclined. And she's like, there's no way between when they get him on the boat to when they get him to shore that he wouldn't bleed out, because those idiots probably wouldn't know what to do, right?
No, because like even when you get close to the end, he's just got this sort of bloody stump end that's constantly leaking, and it's like, this guy's gonna be dead anyway. Like, infection is setting in.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. And I think when we get near the end of the movie and he is ill, because you see the bit in the car where he's kind of looks like he's just in the throes of infection or whatever. He should never have left the hospital, but he's a fucking idiot. But and that's the sort of thing fucking idiots do.
Yeah, it's like Michael Shannon and The Shape of Water, where he's got the fingers and then he just ends up breaking them off at the end, and it's like, oh, and you just see him constantly just getting worse.
So then we've got Steve and Underban and Ajaro looking for the crocs still. They come across the camp that the Bogan guys were at, and they just see that it's all gone. Then they get stalked themselves. The croc comes up, and they eventually get a spear into it that Underban throws, and then they're hanging onto the rope, and they've got the engine on the boat, but the boat's kind of being pulled through the water. And I'm like, oh, this is super Jaws-like as well, right? The whole thing.
Like all you would need is that seafaring music that John Williams pops in, and it's like this is just fun now. Although it does some crazy. It's not it's almost like xylophonic synth, and it's like, oh, this is pretty upbeat, yay! And then there's almost that bit where you're like, somebody's gonna get it. Thankfully, nobody gets it. Like you see Dave go into the water, and it's like, please get out now. Wait, no, he's actually going to be fine, and because it's like, oh yeah, Nomanwari does not go after the Aboriginal people. It's just a shitty.
And by this stage, you believe it, right? Because he does go in the water, and you think normally, oh God, he's going to get eaten, but he's obviously left him alone. So it actually, a movie has you believing that there is this kinship between Nomanwari and the Aboriginal people. And they also find during this stage, Steve manages to get a tranquilizer dart in, but the croc's still, going nuts, and they're still searching for him, because I think when Ajaro goes into the water, don't they lose one of the spears out of him or something like that?
I think so.
I think that's
they end up with about 2-3 spears at him by the end of it, before the final injection.
Yeah, they find out in the morning they're still searching for him. They find him again, and they get I don't know if they get another spear into him, but he's very tired by this stage. I'd said the tranquilizer, etc., and they get another tranquilizer into him. Then they use whatever that tool is that they use to get the rope around his jaws, and then you see them tying his jaws up. It's quite amazing that you can do that with a large crocodile. You can just put rope around it, tie it, and it doesn't have the strength to kind of open it up. And that's when they catch it, and they're all really happy. There's this bit where they're like all cheering. You see that great shot from the air down to the boat, and they're all really happy that they've caught the shark, caught the croc.
Caught the croc. And doesn't it do the nice thing where it sort of, it does that shot, but then it goes straight into the sort of like, oh wait, no, I'm thinking towards the end where you sort of see the sort of mountainous terrain near Alice Springs.
And then, so what happens is they catch him, they bind his jaws, they leave Underband with him, and then they go back to shore, and Rex is still pissed off that it's alive, and they make arrangements to take Nomanwari back to Steve's little nature reserve where all these other crocs are. And once again, my next line in here is, idiot Bogan John is told that the croc is still alive by his Bogan idiot mate. so he goes into the hospital, says to him, oh, the croc's still alive. And then, of course, John thinks it's a great idea. Oh, I've got no arm. I've just had surgery, obviously, and there's stitches there, but I'm going to risk all that. I'm going to get up and go and finish this thing off. And this is when we get into the final, the final bit. And
it's all high octane from here.
It is. It's all pretty full on. My notes are really strange. I just keep putting idiot Bogan John and his idiot Bogan mate turns up to Steve's reserve. But so they turn up to Steve's little reserve, And they start killing all these crocodiles for no other reason but to piss him off. And they're probably pissed off that that Nomanwari isn't there. And then Kathy's kind of accosted by these guys as well. And I was like, shit,
Yeah, and
what's going to happen here?
again, this film has remarkable restraint for being an exploitation film, because you're expecting it with the age rating and everything else that she's gonna get horribly maimed or something, and it's like, oh, she got out of this pretty light.
Pretty okay, I guess. Yeah, it's
Wow. It's like the kid died. It's like, wait, the ratio sort of dictates child dies is the worst thing that happens in this, or somewhere between that, and the crocodile's getting hunted down. And it's like, yeah, we don't need the lady being hassled in the worst way, because that would have over-egged it, I think.
I think so. Yeah, they were very restrained in this movie. I think it's good though. It made for a better film for sure.
Yes.
And then we have John's. I'm calling them the Bogan posse. They go off in pursuit in their car. It looks like some sort of V8 sort of thing, as it would be in an exploitation movie. It has to be like a V8 with a big rumbly engine. And Kathy calls Steve on the radio, and my notes: Bogan idiot John and his Bogan idiot posse are on their way. So yeah, so she radios Steve and says that the posse are on their way. And then we have this chase along a dirt road, and while they're chasing along,
it's like somebody took the ending of Lake Placid, where they've tied the crocodile onto the back of this giant truck, covered it in leaves and everything, and just went, right, high speed chase. We're going to turn this truck into an ATV at the worst possible moment.
But you know what? It wouldn't be an exploitation movie without some sort of chase, right?
You need a really good car chase.
Yeah, you've got to have some sort
to
of
seal
chase.
the deal.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, they have the chase. Within the chase, the truck gets bogged at some stage into the in the sand, and it gets out just by the nick of time. And then when Kathy's on her way, she's somehow coming from a different direction, and they almost collide with her car, and she jumps in the truck. We have this great shot of Underban on the front of the truck, standing on the bar at the front of the truck, pointing forward in the direction they should go, and the truck's roaring ahead, and there he is on the front of the truck, almost like a statue they would have on the front of a truck.
And he takes the nastiest spill.
He does, when the truck crashes at the end.
And it's like, oh dear, I hope you got stunt doubled there, mate. That looked pretty nasty.
I didn't get a chance to listen to the commentary, but I'm going to have to find out whether whether he used a stunt double for that, or he's just like, oh fuck it, I'm just going to stand on the front of this truck.
You see, with the commentary, like, I hoped for a little bit more than what it actually gave, but it was kind of like, oh, isn't this great? Oh, this was great. Oh, this is great too. Look how great it is. And I'm like,
okay,
there's nothing really juicy in it.
Okay, it's not like a Brian Trenchard Smith commentary where they give you lots of information. Yeah, that's a bummer. But that scene where he's on the front of the truck pointing the way, it's just so good. It's great. It's really exciting. It's a really fun part of the film. They crash the truck. Underband is fine. They get the, I don't know. They don't show you how they get the croc off the truck, because I'm like, that's a really big truck. It's a really big croc. It's supposed to be 25 feet or 25 point something feet. And I think when they measured it, it was like 25 feet plus a couple of inches or something. I'm sure they did that just to make it longer than the shark in Jaws, right? And they've also, in this whole scene, which we've missed, there's a bit where they stop at a weigh bridge to weigh the crocodile to find how much it weighs. You never find out how much it weighs, though. They don't tell you.
I imagine it's got to be like a ton.
Easily. Yeah. And so they don't show you how they get the crocodile off the truck.
No, it's just a sort of like here's a brief glimpse of its hind legs
Yeah.
moving, because this animatronic was not built to move.
Yeah, it wasn't really. It was built
Ooh.
to just stay in the water and be pulled along, I assume. So
Yeah, because that it's agonizing few steps towards that water is it just it oh I'd want to say the magic dies, but we all know it's mechanical anyway at this point. So it's like it feels more like a theme park marionette sort of
yeah,
thing.
yeah. I assume that, the bits we saw in the film were probably the best of a really bad bunch of shots of them trying to move it animatronically. It always looks better when it's in the water, right? They start leading Nomanwari into the water, into this billabong area, and they get it in there. It starts going in, and then obviously John and his bogan mates turn up, and we have this fight. We have all these different fights, and they're shooting. They make a shot at the croc. And then we have, a bit of a brawl. We have different things. We have all these, fights here, fights over there. And then we get this awful shot where Underband is shot in the stomach by John, and we hate him even more. Like if you didn't hate him before this, you really fucking hate him now.
Yeah, it's just like a big heart sink moment, and it's like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, it's
Could you have not? And the rest of the bloody Bogan posse are like, yeah, let's just beat everyone up. Oh, wait, John's gone in the water. Everyone make a tactical retreat.
Yeah, and John goes in the water with his axe again. And
it's like, no, you bloody bastard. No, what are you doing? And it's like, the crocodile's gonna be fine. Don't worry about it.
yeah, the crocodile is fine. And finally, he gets his comeuppance and he's taken by the croc and I'm assuming pulled to pieces, and probably good feed for the croc for the next day or two, right? So,
yep.
And I've left out, this all sort of comes about because Algerol throws a spear and gets John in the leg as well. So we have...
Yeah, just Olympic throw.
And that slows him down, and as he's pulling the spear out, that's when he gets taken by the croc. And
because I thought it was a second croc for a moment, and I'm like, no. I want to rewind this. This isn't Lake Placid again.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no, it's just Nomanwari. Right, we're fine, everyone.
Yeah, he's taken. So we're sort of left, and we're on the side of the, on the edge of the water, and we've got Steve sort of cradling Underband in his arms, and all Underband says is, we're born, we die, the spirit lives, and that's the end.
Hey, old man.
We born, we die, spirit lives.
And a massive shriek of anguish.
It's a Mendoza moment, and
this beautiful rocky hillside speed zoom out shot.
yeah. I'm not sure I really like the whole no sort of at the end. I was kind of like, yeah. It kind of works, but I'm never a big fan of those sort of things.
It's if they lingered on it a bit more, unlike most of the pacing of the film, it could have had a bit more impact.
Yeah, it's true. And then we have like an epilogue. So we have Adgerall and another elder feeding, and I realized this, you said it before, and I also realized this morning when I was thinking about it. When they're feeding him, I'm assuming it's part of the remains of Underband.
Yes, it's two of his bones.
Yes, and they're feeding it to him. So that's like not the sacrifice, but it's kind of like the ceremonial sort of thing they do with the croc. And
he's now one with the dreaming.
he is.
We born, we die,
Yeah,
Spirit
yeah,
World.
and there's a bit of a callback to the dance scene and etc. And it's really, really, it's a good way to close the movie. I thought it was closed out really nicely, and it made for a very nice ending. So that was Dark Age. Any final thoughts?
This film is just wicked fun. Like, if you've got a strong stomach for it, you'll get through this no problem. If you're big on kids dying in horror movies and gratuitous scenes of animal hunts, probably give this a skip. It's not as overtly man versus nature as you would hope it would be. It's just a single croc. It's not everything against everyone.
Yeah,
But yeah, Tarantino was right to go gaga for this because it's got some amazing locales. It's got a great cast. It feels like a time capsule, really, where you have this film, like we'd mentioned earlier on, where it's like it'd be so easy to take dreaming concepts in the Aboriginal community and spin off and spin off and spin off until you've just hollowed out this culture. This marks a point in time where tensions were high pretty much everywhere around the place of this, and the fact that you've got everybody coming together to make a fun monster film with a good bit of depth is quite astonishing.
well, thanks so much for joining me today. It's
Thank you
really
very much.
good having you on again, Sketches. It's been great.
It's always a pleasure doing these. Like, confidence is ever building. Coming on to podcasts such as this and Test Pattern, and it's always a treat every time.
Okay, thanks very much for joining me, Sketches. And when we return, we'll be back to see what's up next.
And now, preview time. When it comes to entertainment, you can't beat a good film. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
From the director of My Brilliant Career, a totally new kind of Australian film.
Last night at the Lizard Lounge, Jackie blew the roof off.
What with? Hot air?
Star quality, Auntie Pearl. Star quality.
My cousin Angus, he's reading this book, Sex Psychology, and he reckons guitars are like phallic symbols, and guitarists masturbate for a living. She got body, she's got soul. I'm gonna part without her. I'm gonna trust her with my future.
Why do you keep singing these pointless bloody songs?
Mom. No, throw the blue, just like tango. I just close my eyes and I sing, and I feel like I'm above the crowd.
It's that little something extra.
Starstruck, an Australian musical comedy. Directed by Gillian Armstrong. From Cinecom International Films.
Next up on A Dingo Ate My Movie, I'm joined by Tab to talk about Gillian Armstrong's Starstruck from 1982. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this episode. Thank you to all my guests who give their time to make this podcast possible, and a special thanks to you for listening. Don't forget you can follow A Dingo Ate My Movie on social media. We're at Dingo Movie on Twitter, Dingo Movie Pod on Facebook and Instagram, and on the web at dingomoviepod.com. If you'd like to support the show, head on over to Patreon and sign up for early episodes, bonus episodes, and other goodies. Check us out at patreon.com/dingomoviepod. And finally, we love feedback, so please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or drop me a line at pete@dingomoviepod.com. I take feedback very seriously, and it helps me to improve the show for you and all the other listeners. Once again, thanks for listening, stay safe, and I'll see you on the next episode of A Dingo Ate My Movie.
You don't know me from a cash order, and you're about to tell the whole flaming world that I'm a narrow-minded redneck.
You are.
Now, you listen to me, you little piece of carpet fluff. You couldn't lie straight in bed. And I tell you what, if you think you can wiggle your way out of this one, you better think again, boy. I hope you realise you owe me a new pair of strides.
What are you on about?
Hot coffee, that's what I'm on about. I'll never get that flaming stain out.
Yo, go and talk to Shane. It's got nothing to do with me.
The hell it's got nothing to do with you. You were the one who knocked the coffee out of my hand. Don't get smart with me, young lady. You're going to be supervised every minute of your life from now on. I don't care what's fair. Now get to your room. I'd rather lose a few bob for the satisfaction of ramming these socks down your throat and watching you choke on them.